goal, Quishbilly Huddersfield Town! The most famous goal of Quishbilly's life.
Is this the moment for Lee Fowler? It is. Take your place in Division 2, Huddersfield Town.
And Steve Simonson's boots now. He's missed. Steve Simonson clears the frame of the goal and collapses in a heap of tears. Huddersfield Town are promoted.
Mustafa Schindler has a chance to write his name in Huddersfield Town legend. And he takes that chance!
What a difference a week makes, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the warm-up episode 39. The Terriers host the Royals on Saturday, but will Town make it 3 league wins on the spin, or are Reading here to turn the page in their own season? Joining me, your host, Brady Frost, to preview Huddersfield's latest match, is a man who always enjoys a quiet night at the library. It's my co-host, Josh Phillips. How are you, Josh?
I'm very well, thanks, mate. Love that. Love a bit of an office reference.
Office and a paper reference, because we're talking about Reading. All good.
Inside the paper bin. So.
Exactly. Well, you know, I know people call me as cringy as David Brent, so I just thought I'd jump in there. But anyway, joining Josh and I is someone who has plenty of stories from watching Town so far. It's Mr. David Hartrick. How are you, Dave?
I'm very good, mate. Are you well?
Yeah, I'm good, mate. You seem to be popping up everywhere. You've got the Stephen Chickens podcast to see on the other preview and extra time. You know, can't get you stopped talking about Town.
Yeah, it's been very busy since the start of the season. I think I have benefited from Stephen doing a bit of work for the MEN, shall we say, but he's back next week, so normal service should be resumed.
Well, we've been enjoying the service, mate, so, you know, regardless, long may it continue, that's what I say. But enough of the niceries, it's time for Trash Talk.
Oh, just settle it down, play on. Can we settle it down? What's your excuse there? No excuse at all, no.
Josh, do you want to take it away?
Okay, so as always, this game involves a little bit of an auction between the two of you. So I'm going to set a topic, and then you will each have to say how many of that topic you think you can name in 30 seconds. And then when you think the other person can't name that many, you call them out, say talking trash, and then they have to name that many in that amount of time. So this week's topic is, quite obviously, it's going to be to do with the playoff final 2017. How many of the Reading Matchday 18 from the 2017 Championship playoff final can you name in 30 seconds? So, Brady, we'll start with you. How many do you think you can name in 30 seconds?
5.
5. It's a decent starting effort. Dave, can you increase?
Tell you what, Brady, you're talking trash.
Oh,
called him out.
I think this is tough. I think this is really tough. I'm struggling to get past 2.
Right. So, Brady, were you foolish to say 5? We're going to find out.
Yeah, you went big.
yeah. Well, we did it with Marcus for the Sheffield United Huddersfield playoff, and it was Huddersfield players, and I think he went like 9 straight away. So I was like, oh god. So.
Were you bluffing? We're going to find out. So when I start the watch, you have 30 seconds to name 5 Reading players from the 2017 Championship playoff final. So on your marks, get set, go.
Danny Williams.
Yeah.
El Habsi.
Yep.
Tyler Blackett.
Yep.
Yep. Liam Moore.
Yep. One more.
Baldock, Sam Baldock.
No.
God, who was up front for them? Junior. No, he's just signed for them. I was going to say Junior Hoyland.
2.
I don't know.
It's always the way. Always get to 1.
Told you, you went big. You went way too big there, Brady.
I was going to say Kirk. Is it Kirk? But he was retired long ago. Was it Kirkman? You know, the striker.
Jan Kermagan.
Yeah.
Yep.
He was in it.
He started, yep. You could also, I'm not going to name them all, but you could also have had Chris Gunter, John Swift, Jordan Obita. You said Gareth McCleary?
No, I didn't know.
No, Gareth McCleary, yeah.
How many did you have, Dave? Just
Swift, Williams, and Gunter. That was it. That I had 3. So you massively went big. I was out of my depth early doors, mate. I'll take the victory. Don't get me wrong.
Well, first slot this season, first win, mate. That's.
I think it's interesting this game because I think people they always get to have one left, and then the mind just goes blank. Like you had Kermagant somewhere in there, but it just wouldn't come out in time.
Yeah, sorry, Dave, you go.
I also do a podcast called The Football Fives, and every so often we have a pub quiz episode, and they are the absolute worst because as soon as somebody asks you something, you just no idea, can't remember it. When there's going to be a record of it forever, you just can't remember anything.
The pressure, isn't it?
This is it. People don't know how hard it is to pod, putting ourselves out. Anyway, I'm really annoyed about that. But anyway, we'll carry on. We'll talk a little bit about the Reading team now. So just looking at, I know it's early days, but Reading have only won once so far this season, which was a 2-1 win on the opening day at home to Preston, which, as Town fans have seen, Preston aren't the best side at the moment. They've lost the last 2 to Bristol and Coventry. Dave, I know you've spoken previously about having concerns for Reading, given the ridiculous, wage to turnover ratio. Obviously, they've lost Michael Elise. You think they can get Reading can be got at in this game, don't you?
Yeah, absolutely. I think you've got John Swift is the obvious danger man. He's got the most combined goals and assists in the league so far this season. I know it's early doors, but that does count for something. But they've got a lot smaller squad this time. They've lost Elise, who was, by far and away their greatest creator. I think he was creating something like 2.7 chances per game last season, and they've got nothing like this season. Not even Swift is getting anywhere near. I think the fact they've lost, the games they've lost as well. I went back and I watched the Coventry game at the weekend, and Coventry completely outplayed them. How Reading went 1-0 up in that game and then only lost in the last minute is an absolute travesty. They should have lost that game 3-0, genuinely. Oh. So I think what Town should do, if I'm brutally honest, is Reading are currently 18th in the table. They may have scored 2 more goals than Town, but they've also conceded 2 more than Town. Bear in mind, Town have been battered 5-1 this season in one game. I think Town should just play them like they're 18th in the table. You don't have to think about previous games or Lucas Shell coming on and putting the fear of God into Romani Edmonds Green or anything like that. Just play them like they're 18th in the table, because I said, I think in the pre-season prod, I said I had serious concerns about Reading, and I've seen nothing to arrest that, if I'm brutally honest with you. I would genuinely target this game for 3 points from the off. So a draw wouldn't be a disaster, but if Town are brave and get on the front foot, there's very little, I would say, not much on the break that's gonna really catch them, particularly if they play the 3 at the back.
No, I think you're spot on, Dave. But what about yourself, Josh? Do you agree Reading can be got at in this game?
Yeah, definitely. Just going to back up a couple of those points there. So doing a bit of research for this, and I saw that Coventry had 25 shots at the weekend. I thought that can't be right, but from what you just said there, it probably was right.
Yeah, it was.
Incredible number of shots to concede in the game. Also agree with the point about Elise. Obviously, he's a huge loss for Reading. Pretty much everything good went through him last season. And he obviously improved the standard of players around him as well. So to lose him is a big blow, and it doesn't look like they've filled that gap or learned to deal without him yet. The manager, Veljko Paunovic, am I saying that correctly? I don't know.
Better than me.
He's a bit of a pragmatic manager, isn't he? He'll adapt to sort of how Town approach the game, and I think, although we did play really well against Everton, it will be quite a different challenge. I think we'll have the challenge of breaking Reading down, which is not something we've always been great at in general over the years. But yeah, what to expect from Reading? I think, I agree, they are there to be good at, to be honest. They had a great start to last season, but ultimately that ended in disappointment. And it looks to have that second half of the season form looks to have carried on into the other part of this season.
Yeah, they also that first half of the season, they were outperforming like so many statistical measures. They were outperforming their XG. It was ridiculous. And the thing is, when you do that, sooner or later, that always catches up with you. And I'm not convinced they were that great last season. I think they just coped with very weird conditions better than an awful lot of teams in what was a relatively weak championship.
I mean, last season finished as 7th, was probably the anomaly of last few seasons for their league positions. Going back to obviously the playoffs since then, and before that actually, they've always been sort of a lower championship side, haven't they? Generally over the last 10 years.
Yeah, no, it's an interesting point. And sorry, I forgot who did the research in this, which is really bad. I'll try and find it. But I saw, interestingly, I think not since 2010, which was Brendan Rodgers' Swansea, is the team that's finished 7th, has actually gone on to do better. Most teams tend to finish, I think it's between 13th and 16th after finishing 7th, which is quite an interesting quirk. Look at that, mate. Yeah. Well, I knew Hartrick was coming on, so I took my game. It's like Vieira Keane. Vieira would get up for it more in training when he knew he was playing Keane on the side. I'll let listeners decide. I think who's well, Dave plays football still, not like me who's been ruled out. So I'd say he's probably more cultured than Vieira. Whereas I don't know. That's a separate pod. I think we're a foot anyway. Josh, who did you pick out as a key player for Reading? Dave, I know you picked out John Swift there.
I'm for the Josh Laurent. I think he started this season pretty well. He's the driving force in midfield. Continuing the good form he showed last season. Whenever I've seen Reading play, he's always stood out. His strengths, he's very good passer of the ball, particularly playing through balls, and he can also dribble, tackle, pretty much full package really. So he's the one that could be the source of Reading attacks on Saturday.
Very interesting stuff. I mean, for my key player, maybe it's because I'm being influenced by kind of breakthrough stars, given what's happening with Sorba. But from kind of what I've seen, I'm going to admit I've not watched every Reading game in full 90, but Femi Aziz, who's kind of from the under-23s and broken through, he's got 2 goals already this season.
Yeah, he's good. He's good.
He's really good. I mean, he's average. I was just again getting statty, averaging over 2 shots a game. He's playing on the right in a 4-2-3-1. I think obviously we'll come on to how we think the Town will line up and how we want them to line up. But it'd be interesting to see who's playing left. Obviously, Toffler's had a couple of games now, but I think that could be a bit of an interesting matchup given how Toffler likes to get forward. But yeah, he's really impressed me. I think, like I say, losing Elise, he's not a direct replacement or anything like that. But I think attacking wise, especially like you talked about John Swift there, Dave, a player I've always really liked in this league. I think there is chance Reading can hurt us. They have got some players to hurt us still. Obviously, we saw what Lucas Giles did last season against us. But yeah, we'll move on. Dave, I'll come to you for key player for Huddersfield. Who have you selected for this one?
Well, it's very difficult to not go with Sorba Thomas because his output this season, I've got a piece going up on the Examiner tomorrow, is so far beyond any of his teammates. It's untrue. He's averaging at the moment 4.3 key passes a game. Now, to put that into perspective, Fulham have got, I think it's 9 players who are averaging over 1, but the top is Carvalho on 2.5. West Brom, I think, have got 5, and their top is Darnell Furlong, I think, on 2.3. Sorba Thomas is averaging 4.3, and the closest to him is who has played over 90 minutes is Lewis O'Brien with 0.5. So Sorba Thomas is not just the sort of the main focus of Town's attack. He is their attack at the moment. The chance creation stat that went round, unfortunately, to break a few Town fans' heart, it's not actually true. Callum Cook at Bradford City has actually created 22 chances and is ahead of Sorba, and he got to 21st. But it's still phenomenal numbers. And he's obviously aided by taking the set pieces, and his set piece delivery so far has been absolutely superb, has been unparalleled, really, over the last. I can't think of a better set piece taker. Even Aaron Moy wasn't as consistent as Sorba has been since the start of this season. But even with a bit of tax taken out for his set piece delivery, it's just phenomenal numbers so far. And since he made his debut in February, of the championship players who've played over 500 minutes of football, he is averaging the highest chances created per 90 minutes at 3.2. I think the closest to him is Emi Buendia for Norwich, who shouldn't have been in that league. He's the best player I've ever seen play in the championship, who was averaging 3.1 last year. So he's putting up phenomenal numbers. Now, he will regress because of the amount of football he will play and because his body is not used to playing a full championship season yet. So there's going to come a point in the season where he has a lull and those numbers regress. But quite frankly, when he's in this sort of form, and he's far from the finished article, he's extremely raw. His end product's not always there, but he is incredibly enthusiastic. He's got the right attitude. He's making everything tick. Just play him, just feed everything through him, just get him on the ball as much as you possibly can. When the lull comes, give him a rest. You need to find other things to do. But for the minute, just make sure you get him on the ball as often as you possibly can.
Absolutely. It's staggering, isn't it? Like you say, Town, weren't good at defending set pieces last season, but not the best at attacking them. And like you say, he's almost getting one every game at the moment. It's crazy. I mean, Dave, I was going to ask, because obviously you and Steve, obviously you've done bits for the Examiner as well. Was there anything to kind of indicate Sorba to do this? Obviously, we saw him perform quite well in pre-season, but was there anything that suggested his emergence was going to happen?
Me and Steve have always really liked him. We last season when he arrived, nobody knew what to make of him. It's a complete unknown quantity, and don't believe anybody who says that they've been on Sorba Thomas since his early days at Boreham Wood, because that's absolute rubbish. But what was markedly different to a lot of signings and a lot of people that have come into that club is that even when he wasn't in the matchday squad, he was coming to the games, he was watching the warm-up, he was speaking to coaches, he was speaking to players. Games where he was in the squad, but he was a sub early on. He was the last to walk out after the warm-up, having been the first to come out. Loved the shooting drills like you wouldn't believe. Just embracing everything about being a professional footballer. Now, they've had to do a little bit of work with him. I'll tell you something I was told off the record, which is, for instance, his first away trip with the team, somebody caught him having a bottle of Coke. And they said, you're a professional footballer now, have a bottle of water. But they're just the things you learn. They're the things that you don't even think about. But this is a kid who learns and who wants to improve. So me and Steve have always had a great deal of affection for him, and we've always really, really hoped he would push on. And last season, he was often coming into stress positions in games. It was very, very difficult. I don't think it's a bit like Scott High. You couldn't judge anything on Scott High's cameos last season because he was forever coming on when the game was effectively gone, or having to chase a game that wasn't there to be chased. But then pre-season, what was interesting was not only was he used a lot, he was used in a lot of different positions. So he was played on the left, he was played as a 10, he was played on the right, effectively doing Pippa's job, coming in and playing as the false 10 as well. And you could see there was a lot of work going into that young man, who had arrived early as well, because he wanted some conditioning training and he wanted to force himself into the manager's thinking. And you sort of got the impression that, hang on, here's somebody who is working pretty hard and is probably going to take a chance if they get it. And he's got that chance and he's just grasped it with two hands. No one can sustain the level he's putting up at the minute. And as I said, his end product's not quite there. He needs to work on some of his decision making, but that's fine. You put up with all of that because of all the benefits he gives you, which, like I said, he is Town's creative player at the moment. He is their driving force. Town has scored 6 goals this season in all competitions, and he's been involved in 4 of them. He should have got the assist for Karoma's goal, in my humble opinion, but it's just not how Opta works. So yeah, there were signs, there were indicators, and as I said, he will regress at some point. But that doesn't mean he's not going to go again. That's just what happens. That's more about his body than anything else. And if he keeps his attitude right, which there is every indication, it's very, very, he's very, very good at this point, then Town genuinely could have a really special young player on their hands over the next couple of years.
Yeah, no, it's very interesting. Oh, Josh, I'll just come to you in a sec for your key player. But I remember when we signed him, I spoke to some Boreham Wood fans, and I think a guy who was a historian for the club, and they were obviously, I know it's a much, Boreham Wood compared to Huddersfield Town, it's, completely different leagues, but they were adamant that he was going to be a star, and they even talked about his set piece delivery. And I suppose you do wonder if it translates, which we've seen it has. But yeah, no, it doesn't sound, it's not like Town fans to hype up a player, but he, like you say, he's doing amazing at the moment, and long may it continue. But like you say, we shouldn't expect it for the rest of the season, because if I don't think any player's ever got like you say, over 40 assists in a season, but who knows? Anyway, Josh, we could spend all day talking about Sorba Thomas and how much we love him. I know you love him too at the moment, but who have you picked for Town as a key player for this game? Was it Sorba?
No, I'll go with someone different, but just on the subject of Thomas, while we're having a bit of a Thomas loving, what's impressive is how effective he is from various positions as well. He's played left wing back, right wing back, on either wing, and he's still been as effective in all those positions, which is quite rare. And as you say, his attitude, you can really tell that he's loving being a professional footballer, and he's not going to waste this opportunity. But my key player is someone that I pick most weeks for this. I'm a big fan of his. That's Lewis O'Brien. I think to combat the Josh Laurent and Rinomota in midfield, I think and also John Swift's in there as well. So I think the midfield is probably Reading's position of strength. So we'll need Lewis O'Brien to be on his game. And try and do what he does best, get the team on the front foot, moving forward. He's good at winning free kicks now. He's starting to do a bit of the Jack Grealish, inviting the player in and then nicking the ball past him. I think Lewis O'Brien, for me, will be our key player.
Oh, great shout. I know you do love him, Josh, and quite rightly, you mention him every week because, as we've said before, all the Leeds United scouts listen to this and you're just trying to drive it up, aren't you?
I'm trying to get up to 10 mil out of Dean.
Exactly. That's what we need, mate. That's what we need. I picked my key player is Lewis O'Brien's best mate. It's Harry Toffolo. Obviously, we've talked about Sorba, and I think that kind of throws an interesting question up how we're going to line up here. But I think, and I think you and Steve were talking about it, Dave, the Sheffield United game, obviously it's always great to win in the last minute, but that game for 60 minutes, although Town defended very well, wasn't the best at that point. But, that double substitution and bringing on Toffolo did change it. And, obviously he puts the assist for Colwell. And I just think last season we saw the link up he had with Koroma, how they'd overlap. And I do think, like you say, Dave, Reading can be got at. And if Toffolo plays and Koroma plays, I think we can really cause them. That's going to be kind of our main channel of attack. And I think we could cause them some issues. So, I think if he does start, which obviously played against Everton, didn't have the best game, but obviously he's coming back after a bit of a layoff. So he's the one I picked out. I think could do something really good. So look at that. We've got, this is what happens when you win. You can talk about all the great players you've got, So we'll move on anyway, because it's time for the view from the other side. So earlier I caught up with Matt, who's from the Reading podcast, Elm Park Royals, and here's what he had to say about the game.
We're sorry, your call cannot be
Hello,
taken
no
as
one is available to
Cut the
take your
number
call.
and dial again.
Please leave a message after the tone.
Hi Matt, thanks for joining us. So Reading have had a mixed start to the season so far, having only won once against Preston. Can you tell us briefly the situation with the club at the moment?
The situation at the club is not looking particularly promising. The transfer side, we're under an embargo, which means that we can only bring in players who are free agents or loan deals. And we have completed a couple of free agent signings, or one free agent signing and one loan deal. So that's the first proper signing that our manager Veljko Paunovic has made in the year that he's been here. So that's potentially a good thing. But as you say, mixed start to the season. We've lost a few games just by a single goal. Stoke opening day, we looked pretty good. There was a bit of a manic 5 minutes in that game where it went from 1-0 to 1-1 to 2-1 very quickly. And we've just seen a lot of defensive errors, which is unusual after last year. I would have said that defensively we were a lot better than going forward. Lucas João's now out for a while. Yaku Meite's out for a while. And that's going to hinder us in that aspect as well.
Veljko Paunovic seems to be coming in for criticism at the moment from certain sections of the fan base. But what are your thoughts on the manager?
Yeah, I mean, Veljko's situation has been difficult from the beginning. He came in with a week or so of the summer break last season and obviously hit the ground running. And in some ways that might have harmed him because last season probably should have been a rebuilding season. And yet our start meant that we really had to go for at least the playoffs, which obviously didn't happen in the end. It's difficult to say that he's been good. In that run of games at the beginning of last season where we took, I think, 22 points from 24, we never looked particularly convincing. But obviously getting points on the board, he was doing something right. This season, he hasn't been able to strengthen the squad, as I said, but we've obviously lost key pieces in Omar Richards and Michael Elise, who's a massive loss. But that is slightly softened by the fact that John Swift has come back and been, well, the best player in the team and the best player on pretty much every field so far this season. I personally would give him a bit more time, but I can definitely see why some are turning on him. The defensive situation just hasn't been good enough so far this year. And if he doesn't sort that out quickly, he's not going to stick around very long.
So Reading released a statement earlier this month saying they're not going to disclose the embargo status, but said they are confident about strengthening the first team. I've seen you brought in a couple of players such as Junior Hoylett. Are there any signings you're particularly impressed with?
Yeah, so as has been touched on, they actually released a statement saying that they were unhappy that the embargo status had been disclosed. So Reading are under an embargo. That is a fact now. That's noted on the EFL website. It sounds like we are more confident of signing players over the last few weeks. So the way that our embargo seems to work, it's not quite as strict as Derby's. So that's obviously been widely reported on. But for every signing, we have to ask the EFL for permission. Sounds like they've set out guidelines for what they would accept. And obviously, Tom Dele-Bashiru and Junior Hoylett, as you mentioned, have come in. They've both not really played too much so far. Dele-Bashiru had a sub appearance and then started at Coventry. He looks okay, but he's been playing sort of out of position on the left wing. Junior Hoylett played 30 minutes on the right wing, which I think is his opposite wing to normal. Junior Hoylett is at least a winger, and we've been crying out for those. Dele-Bashiru, I think, in time will probably have a role to play in our kind of midfield screen in front of the defence because he seems to be more press resistant than either Rinomhota or Laurent, but particularly the former. Junior Hoylett, yeah, I think he'll be a backup choice, but just having that option off the bench is obviously hugely important for us.
From research, Reading seem to set up in a 4-2-3-1 formation. Are there any players we need to keep an eye out for on Saturday?
Last season, I was said we will 100% set up in a 4-2-3-1. We played 4-3-3 or a 4-4-2 diamond on a couple of occasions, but this season we seem to be. I'm not sure whether it's just because of the personnel available. I think it probably is, but we've been playing a back five a little bit. I think that kind of got shelved after Bristol because after the first 15 minutes. We started only a back five, had to change after 15 minutes, and I'm not sure whether we'll see it back. So as you say, the 4-2-3-1 is probably the most likely situation. John Swift, I think, is one of the best players in the division. He's been on fire so far this season, and other than that, it's really difficult to pick any standouts. Josh Lauren received a lot of plaudits last year. He doesn't really do the flashy stuff. He's a defensive midfielder, but normally what he does very well. It's interesting that tactically he seems to be pushing forward a bit more than he did last season, and maybe that's where some of our defensive frailties have come to the fore. Other than that, if Oviajara is back, I mean, it's unlikely he'll start the game because he hasn't really played much football, but he's obviously got some of the best feet I've ever seen. And I mean, I keep really wanting George Puskás to come good up top, but I mean, it hasn't happened yet. But maybe Saturday is the day when it will.
So how are Reading fans feeling about the game?
I think it's just seen as a match where we have to get a result. I'm not confident about going up there and winning, but if we don't pick up a point, then it just piles so much more pressure on Velko. I don't think that there's any real optimism, without trying to be too disrespectful to Huddersfield or any of the teams that we've played so far. I think that they are teams that on paper are likely to be down towards the bottom of the table or mid-table, like teams that Reading, at least behind the scenes, I'm sure will feel like they should be beating. Maybe with the exception of Stoke, who could really do anything this season. And the problem is when you're not winning those games, obviously morale drops. And I think Deli Bashiri came out and said that in the press conferences this week, which Velko didn't actually attend, which is interesting. So yeah, I mean, I think in some ways, like the game is almost secondary to what's going on off the field in terms of the embargo and bringing players in. But I think a loss would be really damaging. So yeah, I think just getting even a point on the board, try to start, kickstart the season, that would be really beneficial to us.
And what are you expecting from the game against Huddersfield?
I assume that Reading will go there and sit back and try and play on the counter. That seems to be how we played against Stoke on the opening day and then Coventry last weekend in our 2 away games so far. The only issue is that our defending has been absolutely abysmal at points. If you want to see just hilariously bad defending all round, then go and watch our Coventry goal, the Coventry winner from Saturday. I think there's about 3 or 4 defensive mistakes from a Coventry goal kick. I wouldn't expect it to be particularly high scoring. I think that we'll have been working on the defensive side of things this week. And without Lucas João, it is difficult to see where the goals are really going to come from for Reading, even though, I mean, we have scored in most games, every game except in the Cup, I think. As for a score, I'm optimistically going to go for 1-1, I think. As I say, I don't think it'll be high scoring. We have been surprisingly clinical when it comes to chances this season, which is good because we haven't been getting many. Whether George Puskás kind of manages to kick himself into gear, I'm not sure. I'm just hoping he doesn't miss any big chances. But even Coventry, I think we had 4 or 5 shots, and one of them was a penalty, which we somehow managed to win. So just something like that to get us going, I think. So yeah, I'll optimistically go for a 1-1.
Okay, we've heard from Matt. Now, Josh, why don't you take us back in time?
A backpack full of memories.
I bet you can't guess which game I'm going to pick.
Oh, no idea.
So Town and Reading. Town have won 16, Reading have won 26, and there's been 13 draws at the previous meetings. But certainly in my lifetime, most games between Town and Reading have been pretty drab affairs, to be honest. And there's only been one that stands out in memory, and even that was, a pretty awful game. But we all remember what happened.
Yeah, the 2-2 last season. That was good.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Josh Crone, great striker. No, obviously the 2017 playoff final. I don't know what to say about that, really. Just 120 minutes of torture, followed by a few more minutes of torture with the penalties. But it was all worth it, wasn't it, when that went in? And I think we can all agree that, memories for life were made on that day. And whenever Town play Reading in the future, it's always going to hark back to that day. And also interesting that our last 2 league games have been against Sheffield United and Reading back to back. So that's 2012 playoff final and 2017 playoff final. We beat Sheffield United. Can we back it up against Reading?
I like how that was shoehorned in. Yeah, I mean, obviously we've talked about it to death, but that doesn't mean we can't talk about it some more. But I just remember, I don't know if they still do it at the playoff final. Do you remember, was it Sky? They'd have the pulses. So people are watching it for key moments.
Reading Steve.
Yeah. It was like, I mean, I don't want to know, but his heart rate was quite high. I think Sean Jarvis was one of them as well, and it was quite low. I thought Sean was being maybe a bit too chilled, but I'm not a doctor. So.
One of the Reading guys was worryingly low. I think someone.
Yeah. I mean, it was a dull game. So I think well, until all the matches were won, but great memories. And we'll talk about it at any opportunity, Josh, right away. So, but we'll move on because it's time for a turn to the Mac.
Christopher Schindler has a chance to write his name in Huddersfield Town legend.
De Platter's got the better. Yes! And Laurent De Platter scored. What a goal, Aaron Moy! An absolute thunderbolt delivered all the way from Australia. Return to the Mac.
So, Dave, your first appearance this season. We've seemed to have a theme at the moment with our guests where they'll just pick an amazing player and then me and Josh are scrambling around to try and match it. So is that going to be the same with you? Who have you gone for?
I've gone for a really obvious pick, but a lot of it is based on the way Town are attacking this season and trying to utilise the best from Sorba Thomas. Mm-hmm. And that is, I've gone for Marcus Stewart, who I could see getting on the end of several of I've watched, I don't know how many times he's done it this season, but that cross that Thomas puts in that just needs the touch to go in, just needs anybody to get there. Marcus Stewart's movement and his instinct were so good, like so almost unparalleled really in a Town shirt. And the idea of Thomas feeding him is I think that would be pretty good.
That's a brilliant shout. I picked Mounier last week for the same reason. Not comparing Mounier to Marcus Stewart, but I like you said, that just his delivery is devastating. So I think that's a great shout. Josh, do you want to go next, or shall I jump in? Because mine it wasn't going to win, so I thought this might happen. So I went with Phil Billing. I know his time at Town didn't end well, and I know he won't win this poll particularly now.
People vote on this, don't they?
People do vote on this.
Yeah, you've no chance.
Exactly. Well, we start putting our reasoning now in the tweets, but it don't make a difference. But anyway, I just, he could score a screamer. He was a tall lad, particularly, we talk about deliveries, but I know we still don't really have explored the full rules of return to the Mac, but obviously with Bournemouth, he's been playing a bit further forward and chipping up with goals. And
he's been playing as a number 10, hasn't he, for Bournemouth, which is quite interesting, I think.
Yeah, I mean, he was one of them where, obviously, I remember the long throw. Dwayne seems to be doing that now, but he could obviously, he always scored the odd screamer at Town, and it kind of, I don't know, it makes sense, like you say, playing as number 10, because he does seem to score, I think, when he's in that kind of places. But anyway, so I picked Billing. He's not going to win, but I think he'd be really good in this team. So that's who I've gone for. But Josh, who have you gone for?
I think that'll be about as popular as my Jack Hunt pick from last week.
Definitely, mate. We're getting all the stinkers out. It's a long season. So,
but saying that, I was a big fan of Phil Billing.
Same.
Yeah, really good player, really good. But I've gone for someone who is probably one of the only people that could challenge Marcus Stewart in this poll, and that is Mr. Andy Booth.
Oh.
And I've gone along the same lines of the delivery from Thomas, and also Sinani put a few good balls in the other night as well. So we need someone to stick the ball in the back of the net, and who better than Mr. Huddersfield Town himself, Andy Booth. I think it'd be interesting. This one could go either way. Not Phil Billings' way, but
who knows?
Yeah, it's a 2-horse race. I'm sorry, Brady, but it's a 2-horse race.
Has he stumped you there, Dave? I think that's a bit of a, maybe a.
The thing is, I think this is. I was genuinely trying to think of this in terms of the game ahead, and I think it always going to be a striker in Town's current situation.
Yeah. Oh, well, I think that's good. Question is, though, would you rather have a team of Andy Boobs or a team of Marcus Stewart?
Team of Marcus Stewart's, I think, just.
I enjoyed how seriously you answered that question as well, Dave. I appreciate you listening to my nonsense and responding. But we'll move on because it's you're the boss. So David Hartrick is in the dugout now instead of Carlos. Dave, I don't think I asked you when we did this. You've done this before, but what would be your management attire? How would you go for it?
Well, all managers either look like a pilot or coach driver. So Sam Allardyce, coach driver, Arsene Wenger, pilot, Alex Ferguson, coach driver, David Moyes, coach driver, Alan Pardew, pilot, interestingly. I think I'd wear a suit, and I'd like to think I look like a pilot, but I'd definitely look like a coach driver.
Are you just suit? You're not going waistcoat or anything, or like
no suit, V-neck jumper in winter. Yeah, that would do me.
Oh, I like it. So we know how you're going to be dressed up in the dugout, but this is obviously, it's not how you think Carlos will line up, it's how you would line up Town. And so tell us, how's Hartrick's team looking?
I would go with a 3-4-3, which is Corbyn has been. We got some really good tactical stuff out of him at a couple of presses last week, and he's been using a 3-4-3 in possession and a 3-5-2 out of possession to sort of give him the extra man. And I think a 3-4-3. I think you saw against Sheffield United that Town's forwards are more comfortable in a 3, and Fraser Campbell, for all his knockers, really brings a lot more from Josh Koroma. Chicken said it was like the Heskey Owen thing, and there is an element of that where when Campbell's there and he's doing the pressing and he's doing the hard yards, Koroma just seems to sense that he's going to be able to pick up those pockets of space. So I think with that in mind, I would go with a 3-4-3. And I think if you start, you have to be able to react. If you start sacrificing a little bit in midfield against a 4-2-3-1, then you have to immediately change and put your shape into a 3-5-2. But I think it's just because I think Town can win this game. And I don't, I'll be brutally honest with you, over the last couple of seasons, it's been quite rare I've said that. But I genuinely think Town can win this game. And I think the way to do it is with a 3 up front and be brave. Keep the press as high as they did against Everton, because that's what was really, really notable. Keep the press, keep the bravery, keep the energy, and try and start fast. If you 1-0 down after half an hour, you've still got 60 minutes, right? So just start fast, just go for it, get on the front foot.
Yeah, and we saw Town did that too. Started fast last season and would normally go in front. But who's in your 3 then? Obviously, you talked about Campbell, and I agree with you. He's in my team. He's still our best striker for me, even though he's never been known as a goal scorer really. But
it would be Koroma left, Campbell in the middle, and Thomas on the right. You could make the argument that Thomas is better playing as more of an out-and-out winger in the 3-5-2 on the right. But I think for me, that's the 3 I would start with anyway. And I think it also gives you the options to change it. And there will be people, as I said, who think Campbell is a striker who doesn't score, but if he doesn't score, but it benefits other people being there, you have to weigh one against the other.
No, spot on. I agree with you. I think we would all admit Ward's not had the best time at Town. And I agree. If we win 2-0 and Campbell's created that space for Corona or Thomas, I think everyone's going to be fine with that. Josh, what about you? How are you lining up?
Just on Campbell, I think we're starting to see the value of him more this season. Now we've seen the alternatives, although, could be argued, should they be the alternatives? That's a different argument, isn't it? But I think we've seen, the thing about Campbell is, no matter how well or badly he's playing, you notice him and he has an impact on the game. He imposes himself on the game, doesn't let it pass him by. For me, he'd start up front. But I agree, I'd go 3-4-3 as well. I think that's the formation we've played best in so far this season. Albeit we've only had the last couple of games as the test for that. But I'd have Nichols in goal, Pearson, Sarr, Colwill as back three. I've gone slightly different here. So I don't think Ollie Turton's up to it, being brutally honest. So I'd go with Thomas, right wing back, Hogg and O'Brien in midfield, Toffolo left wing back. And then I'd have Sinani on the right, Karoma on the left, Campbell up front. Now that is very attacking, but let's just go for it.
It's your team, mate. You can go for it. Dave, I don't know if you heard, but when Josh doesn't, I don't know if this is a theme, but when Josh doesn't like someone, he'll say, just bring in any loan player, and he doesn't care who it is. So would you do the same with Turton? Obviously, I don't think you're the biggest fan of Turton, it would be fair to say. You're not bringing in a random loan right back?
No, not for 12 weeks. It was, we asked Carlos last night what he wanted to do, and he said that rather than bring somebody in for 12 weeks, he wants to find the solutions in his squad. And I think they're there. I don't think Turton is a problem. I think he's a right back. He's not a right wing back. He's not a wing back of any sort. He's a right back. And it stands out that he gets uncomfortable playing too far forward, if I'm honest. And there are going to be a lot of games where Ollie Turton will be a very, very valuable asset, I think, for Town going forward, and particularly in Pippa's absence. But I think in games where you really want to have a go, I think you probably don't start with Turton, if I'm honest. But he's not a bad player by any means or anything like that. He's just limited. And I think Steve made the observation earlier, so I'm pinching it off him. You've got to remember he was signed to play sort of 10 to 15 games this year at the most. And it looks like he's going to play 10 to 15 games before Pippa's even fit. So he is he's all right. He's already outside the realms of what his designated squad role was anyway.
Out of interest, who would you have? I know you said you have Karoma and Thomas either side of Campbell. So in the 3-4-3, who do you have as the right wing back?
I would actually put, particularly after his performance against Everton, I'd put Holmes there because I think it gives you more flexibility to drop back into a 3-5-2. I think Holmes he's got the bit between his teeth. I don't think he liked being booed coming on. He has, since that moment, to me, he has looked pretty determined, even in warm-ups, etc. And he came on against Everton, and quietly he had his best game in a Town shirt since returning. And it wasn't a showy game. It wasn't, if he'd have scored that goal, I don't know if you saw the game, but the shot he had from 25 yards that Begovic plucked out of nowhere, 2/3 of Championship goalkeepers do not get to that. So if he'd have got that goal, he would have got all the headlines, is the thing. He didn't. He was just really quietly effective. And again, I'm a big one for when players are starting to get into form and getting into confidence, just play them. Just play them, And I know he's not got a lot of goodwill in the bank from Town fans. I completely understand that as well, because he has been bitterly underwhelming since he came back. But I do think he's had a kick up the bum. if I'm honest. And I do think he's now got the bit between his teeth.
Yeah, I agree. He has been underwhelming since he came back. But for me, I think second half of last season is a little bit of a write-off. I was giving him a free, what's it called? Clean slate at the start of this season. So although he's not had the best start to this season either, I think when his style of plays, he likes to run with the ball. So when it's not coming off, it looks terrible because he's just losing the ball every time he gets it. But against Everton, he had a couple of dribbles early on where he got round his man, released the ball. I think that gave him confidence. And as you say, that shot, wow, the way he just dug it out from the floor, like it's similar to one against Swansea, although without the bobble this time.
Yeah, the technique was excellent. And the other thing is, I think if you play it that way, you can drop Sorba back and push Holmes up to play on the right of a three, which is where he spent most of pre-season. And he actually looked really good. We were bigging him up in pre-season pieces, saying, like, play him in one position where he's comfortable and bring his form out of him. The problem is, like, Sorba Thomas has just come along and just blown all of that out of the water because he's been so good. But there you go. Nice problem to have.
Thomas could actually increase the standards of his rivals for the starting 11, though, couldn't he? With his performances.
Yeah, nearly every Town player I've spoke to this season impresses, and Naby Zaha said it again last week, has said how much more competition there is for places and how it's bringing more out of people and how training's more intense and all these things you slightly take for granted as cliches when you hear them from footballers. But then you think, hang on a sec, Town last season, there was a lot of that team that were getting in by default because there was nobody else. So now suddenly they're looking around and going, hang on a sec, everybody is fit apart from a couple. There are more options here. If I start playing badly, I'm out of this team.
I think there's no position to illustrate that better than centre-back. We've got Pearson, Sarr, Colwill, Lees. We've all done well when they've played this season for the majority of the time. So they know that they can't really afford any mistakes. So there's someone there to step in their shoes.
I really like Lees as well. I think he's just... I think they all give you something slightly different. And I think the thing about Lees is that he's just a very intelligent defender. And he's not brilliant on the ball. He's not the strongest. He's not great in the air. So he uses his mind, and you can see him just giving himself that extra yard against a certain striker. You can see him working the opposition out. And yeah, he's probably going to play 20 games this season, something like that, and some of those appearances would be off the bench. But if that's your fourth choice option, that's a pretty stacked deck, if I'm honest.
Yeah, I agree.
No, I think I completely agree with you, Dave. You don't, obviously we know Corberan likes to play out, but I think you're spot on. Like Pearson, Colwill, Sarr, they all complement each other really well. Because like you say, Naby, I know you weren't talking about him, but Naby's been so good as the middle centre back, and it's no surprise really, because he's got Pearson or Lees who can do that stuff, and Naby can focus on what he does, and then you've got Colwill who's really comfortable playing the ball out. It's really good. I think in terms of team, like I've kept the same as you guys really. I think 3-4-3 because I do think we can get at them. Pretty much the same team. Campbell still our best striker for me. Gets in, and I'd play Toff. Thomas, you just got to play him because he's in form. Same as you, Dave. I've actually put Holmes in this team. I was debating whether to put him on as the right wing and put Thomas as kind of right wing back, but Thomas is the informed player, and I think we saw particularly against Sheffield United when he did get pushed up how effective he could be. So I suppose what I'll ask you guys is, we're all feeling really positive, which is when we've done these pods before, you've got to enjoy it because it's not always the case. But I'm going to ask you, Dave, for your match prediction. How do you see the game going? And if you had to guess the score, what would it be?
What I would like from this game more than anything else is there was the recorded attendance last night was about 10,500, and I think it was a bit less than that, if I'm brutally honest, looking around. What I would like from this game is Town to put that performance on in front of another 6,000 people, because they were really good, and it was the most fun I've had watching Town for quite a long time. And if it's a 1-1 draw, it's a 1-1 draw. That doesn't matter. That gives you 8 points from the start of the season going into the international break. I think they could win. If they win, that's 10 points going into the national break, which is way beyond where everybody thought they'd be tracking. So I think what I'd like is just keep the bravery and a performance. And if you put that together, the result should come. And I keep fancying a bit of 2-0 Town, but it's sort of my heart. My heart says 2-0 Town, and my head says it could be 1-1, and both should be all right in the context of where Town are and what they're doing. But let's go for 2-0.
Like it. I think, like you say, if it's a 1-1 draw and they've gone for it, because I saw a lot of people saying against Everton that should be the benchmark, which you can debate that, but I think you're right. But I like it 2-0. Our last guest predicted Sheffield United correct as well, so let's hope it keeps going. Josh, what about yourself? How do you see the game going, and what's your score prediction?
I find it interesting, really, how we're all so rightly optimistic. Whereas if you went to about 50 minutes into the Sheffield United game, I think everyone was still a bit sort of doom and gloom about things. But that tactical switch from Carlos to the 3-4-3, I don't think we've looked back since then, to be honest. We obviously won that game and then took that confidence into the Everton game. Really strong performance. So hopefully, it's not very Huddersfield Town thing to do, but hopefully we can replicate that on Saturday. It will be a different challenge. I'm going to go for a 2-1 Town win. I think we'll be fairly convincing for most of the game, but there will be a few moments of madness thrown in there, I think. I'm going to go for Karoma to put us in front, and then I think Reading will equalise. And then I think Sinani will come off the bench and rifle one in to make up for his miss the other night.
Yeah, no, I was impressed with what he saw. He should have scored that, but it doesn't matter. I've also gone 2-1. It just shows you beat Preston. Well, we were at that game, Josh. I think that's one of the worst games I've been to in a long time.
Yeah, shocking.
Yeah.
And 7 days later, that's one of the best I've seen Town play in a long time.
Yeah, no, exactly. We talked about it, and like we were the only positive we could say from that Preston game is we hope it was a springboard. And I know it's only 2 games since, but that Sheffield United win, I think particularly the manner of that win, how they won in the last minute, is you fill you with confidence. And then, like I said, we did lose against Everton, but we played great, and that they looked for the confidence. And like you say, Sinani, he's an option. I don't know if he will start, but he can come on. It just feels like a good moment. I don't know about you guys, but obviously the international breaks after this, and I don't want that. I think Town need to keep going while they can. But I've gone 2-1 as well, and I think that would be great. Like I don't know about you, I wouldn't have, if we have 10 points going into the international break. That was not what I thought would be the case.
That's 2 points per game if we do that. That's motion fun. Who are your goal scorers, Brady?
I'm going to go Karoma. Hopefully he doesn't need 2 bites of the cherry this time. And I'm going to go Sarr, because I just think, Thomas, corners, free kick, Tom Bradshaw we had on, he was like, you can talk about all your fancy football you like, but if you have someone who can whip the ball in like that, and you have a 6'6" centre-back, it's a problem. So
I can't remember last time Huddersfield Town was such a threat from set pieces. It's just not what we do, is it?
No, we were talking about that at the game yesterday, and it's set pieces. You got to understand, like, goals from set pieces are 7 to 10 points a season, and that's 7 to 10 points Town haven't had, and that 7 to 10 points over the last 2 seasons would have put them comfortably mid-table, and the whole club feels different. So it's a huge thing. It's a huge thing.
Yeah. And what was your prediction? Sorry, Dave.
I'm going to go for 2-0. I think there will be a goal from a defender from a set piece, because that's just what Town do nowadays. And I fancy Josh Karoma again. I think he needs 1 goal to get going, and he's got it. So I think he's quite a streaky player, scores goals in patches. So I wouldn't be surprised if he got one.
If I had to push you for a specific defender to score, who are you going with?
He's keeping tally, you say.
Yeah, go on.
I would say Pearson. I'd say Pearson.
Hopefully don't get disallowed this time. The reason I ask is we're doing a little predictions table. So Brady's currently top on 6, and then I'm on 5, and the guests are on 5. So
let's go with Pearson then.
Okay.
Yeah, surely he's going to have one. Well, he's already scored 1 that's been allowed. He's had 2 that are disallowed, so hopefully it'll balance things. I think that's a good shout. Anyway, I'm sure we could talk about set pieces and how much we love Silver Thomas, but I'm sure we could talk about that maybe more after this game. We will see. But thanks to Dave and Josh as always. And thanks to you guys for listening. And we'll be back after the international break. So fingers crossed for another town win.
There's a team that is dear to its followers. The colours are bright blue and white. They're a team of renown, and they're the pride of the town. And the game of football is their delight. And all the while upon the field of play, thousands loudly cheer them on the way. Often you can hear them say, who can beat the town today? And then the bells will ring so merrily, and every goal shall be a memory. So town, play up and bring that cup back to Huddersfield. So town, play up and bring the cup back to Huddersfield.